even if you don't want to play, which is ill-advised, but even if you don't want to play, you need to understand, because we're on the precipice of something that's inevitably happened every other time in history. And I would say that it was kind of just an initiation. If you have closed your eyes, plugged your ears, and said, see no evil, hear no evil, for your whole life, or you have just, sucked on the pacifier that is Dave Ramsey, you might have missed what was shared. But yeah, it was high level view, but also deep enough that if you had never heard any of it, you're like, okay, it actually sparked some interest of wanting to know more.
Okay. Thank you. Because I just, obviously I have my opinion on how I presented it, but how it was received is important. And the same way that we kicked off that conversation, and for more clarity for everybody, basically what I did was I used this accountability group that James and I are in as a primer to get a gauge on how I've been structuring one of the educational seminars that I have through my Native Assets platform, which is a blockchain firm. And we do education, consultation, advising, that sort of thing. But basically how we started that whole conversation was to look at how you create wealth, right? It's three things. We secure capital, we obtain the capital, we secure that capital, and then we activate that capital, right? And so in my experience, in my studies, and even a Dave Ramsey, or a Robert Kiyosaki, or a Paul Tudor Jones, those three things is what you have to do to build wealth. And so get the capital, right? So the first thing that you're going to want to do is get enough money to cover your immediate living expenses for some duration of time, right? At a minimum, you want a month, but typically if you're in a 3 to 6 month period, that's a good place to be in, right? And once you have that, and once you have that nest egg, that rainy day fund, lily bread that's used for nothing else but like break in case of emergency, now whatever you have after that, you can start to play with in terms of capital. Now that's oversimplification. Some people may have an issue with that. There's one guy you introduced me to, his name is Ryan, and he has a finance course. So I'm curious what his thoughts might be on how I just really, condensed a lot right there and maybe skirted over some things. But basically you do that, right? Point being, you don't want to put anything into the market that you cannot stand to lose. And so if you at least have your living expenses covered for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, literally to maintain the exact same level of living that you have now or higher, then technically speaking, anything that you may put in the market that gets lost, not that you won't miss it, but you're not going to go hungry, lose your house, any of that other stuff. So once you do that, you have capital secured. So as some people may be aware, money often loses its value, particularly if it is a thing known as fiat.
You're going to have to explain what fiat is to these people.
Okay, so fiat is the Latin for faith, all right? Fiel in Spanish, faith in English, but basically it means any currency that is not backed by an actual asset, but is rather backed by the belief that it is valuable, so the faith of it. Now, it wasn't always this way. Back in the day, we had the gold standard, money, you turned in your dollar, you would be able to redeem $8 worth of gold, right? And even though that ratio may have changed over time, it was still redeemable for an actual hard asset. Everybody knows the story. Back in the day, some people use clamshells and stuff like that, but effectively some sort of collateral that represent when you gave out the money, the currency, it was really just a more portable, divisible way to circulate what was a claim on the value of that underlying asset, whether it's gold or seashells or what it more so is today, which is oil. But even that technically is not the case, which is why it's still a fiat currency. Even though we have a petrodollar system, eurodollar system, any of that's too in-depth for this conversation. But basically, know that fiat currencies have a tendency to lose their value. So this happens through inflation, this can happen through money printing, and just a little fun fact, all the money, the US dollar, circulating supply, over 20% of all of that supply was printed in the last 18 months. Just some food for thought. So anyhow, how do we...
Inflation.
Right? So then the question becomes, how do we skirt this? And how do we secure our capital? Because basically, your capital is at risk of a few things: theft, destruction, and its depreciation. So inflation, fiat currency, by default, it has that built-in mechanism. It is going to depreciate the value of that currency eventually. Another fun fact, don't believe me, do your own research. Every fiat currency in the history of existence of mankind, recorded history, has gone to zero. Absolute zero, not dropped in value, but zero, worth nothing. Okay, just some food for thought. So then the risk of theft. Most people don't actually have to worry about that because they don't keep large sums of money in their on their persons or in their home or anywhere that can be accessed. Most people keep their money stored digitally inside of somebody else's ledger known as the bank, right? And their money effectively has been turned into not even the paper claim of nothingness, but into a 1 and 0 digit binary in a screen that says you have $100, $1 million, $100 million, right? Which is important for this transition of people wrapping their heads around digital currencies, right? And then the last threat to the money of the capital is its destruction. So some people may be familiar with a rapper named Nipsey Hussle. In one of his poems, as I'm going to call it, he detailed a story where him and his brother had buried 6 figures worth of cash in their backyard for security purposes. And then they went to dig it up sometime later. I don't know how long it was. And they realized the money had molded. Not worth anything at this point now. So you gain your capital, obtain it, right? And then you want to secure it. So protect it from depreciation, protect it from destruction, protect it from theft. Then you got to deploy that money. You got to activate it, right? The most simplest way of this happening is most people, they leave their money, or most people traditionally would think about the stock market. They put their money into the stock market. You buy Apple, you buy Tesla, and then you hope for it to go up and you sell it. And then, you've made a capital gain. But there's many different ways to do it, right? And the market is one vehicle through which typically that is going to be done. And so something we talked about in that last meeting is that the market is going to do a few things, right? It craves efficiency, right? But it needs liquidity. And so by providing that liquidity, you can put yourself in a position where you could earn money, fees, interest, and whatnot. So that's super, super high level.